Kate Mila Falcho. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. This is our Saturday book, and this is video number 2 of the book The Key by Whitley Strieber. And I'm just going to forge ahead here. If you missed video 1, check it out because you won't have all the information. So we ended with the living and the dead share the same world. There's not a special place. We're intertwined. The dead see everything that happens here, and they can affect us and here indirectly if they can make themselves heard in the mind of the living. So if you want that, you have to work on it. We are improving our ability to feel the presence of the dead as a whole. We are. And they will be found in the surroundings of their lives, clinging to memories. So they're attempting often to preserve themselves despite the magnetic attraction of what would envelop them, in the other world. So the light is not necessarily our friend, and it's the fate of the sleeping man. And I thought this was so interesting because the conventional belief is, you tell ghosts you want to get rid of, go to the light. You tell souls of loved ones, go to the light. And he says, going to the light is what you do when you're not woke. When you're a sleeping man, when you have no awareness, when you haven't worked on that radiant being and it can't maintain its structure, you join the light. So I thought that was one of the disturbing things in this book. Awakened man makes his own light as part of the radiant choir. If you aren't an independent being after life, you are engaged in the life of earth and waiting to recur and increase your being. So what he's saying is you either evolve spiritually while on earth by working on creating that soul, being, strength, vibration, whatever, or after you die, your soul is attached because it's coming back again in order to work on your radiant being. So, reincarnation, the cycle, however you want to call it, it's about the electrons spinning, and we have control over that. I think some people are better at it than others. Some people get Olympic gold medals, and there are those of us who walk around the block, So the important thing is to make the effort. And there are 2 types of lives, he said. Those who bear only fragmentary bits of what they were in life. I think this is talking about life after death. They bear only fragmentary bits of what they were in life, simple patterns. They have a weak spin. They're not a clear form. The radiant body is not a clear form. They can't maintain it. They're subject to the process of what he calls recurrence, and I'm assuming that means reincarnation. And nobody around us is from the distant past, except the radiant being. So he's saying that, I think what he's saying is that people from the distant past don't linger after death, they reincarnate. I think that's what he's saying. They have lived lives, radiant beings have lived lives consciously devoted to the evolution and growth of the radiant body. And so they have more spiritual muscle. We can access our past lives. He says all can remember all, that we don't realize what we are. We're just, unaware. Each death is unique and according to your expectations. So if you see, when you die, if you expect to see Jesus, you'll see Jesus. If you expect to go to hell, you'll experience that. If you expect to meet your dead grandmother, you will. But you generally service them, is what he said. And I'm not entirely clear what that means, so we'll have to ask Denise if she knows what's going on here. So those who don't believe in souls make a great discovery. He's asked, Strieber asks him, well, what happens if you're an atheist, He says, well, they're in for a big surprise. So you either become a radiant being, you transcend reincarnation because you worked on it, or you linger and you try again, or you just enter the memory of God. They still have further potential, but they are not, they haven't grown into anything. And it's just energy without form that goes and joins with other energy. So their experience is insufficiently potent to survive. Usually they're just a tiny spark. Your essence is your foundation. He says it's how a specific being tastes. The essence. Every life is an experiment, and not all succeed. Many do succeed. Most do succeed. And the body clings to the earth in after death, in the region of its memories, which is why places seem to be haunted. When a body is created that fits its essential attachments, the life is drawn to the body by unresistible magnetism. So individual bodies uniquely attract individual souls. And this was interesting. Birth in this world is death in another world. It's a recurrence, a great breathing. So you get this sense of the universe inhaling and exhaling. You come and you go. It's a cycle. I thought that was fascinating. Souls are waiting to experience peace. They slowly become aware of what they need. So after you die, let's say you need a little work. You hang out because you know you need a little work, and you're going to come back and work. That's experiencing peace. And they slowly become more and more aware of this fact. Some are frantic because of the nature of their lives. This is the stark revelation for a lot of us that, oh, this was what it was all about. Oh, this is what I should have done, could have done, didn't do. And oh, here we go again. So this could be anguish, or obsession and lusts of life are endlessly indulged, and then you have to face that. But you will never be satisfied. And some souls hang around and see the obsessions and the lusts that they are attached to going on around them. It's like everybody's eating a full pound of these chocolates and you can't have any. That's what it's like. The other world is a place of only the truth, no secrets. And all passed on souls have great compassion for one another. They don't influence the living as much as we sometimes like to think they do, because they're not usually able to make themselves heard. Psychics, there's a part, this is really interesting, and it's so funny because I've often told people who make fun of me for for this, people I know, I often tell them, everybody has psychic ability. It's like anything else. You can develop it. You can exercise it, and it gets better. And it's just, I liken it to a circuit, an electromagnetic circuit. So imagine my surprise when I read this book. And some families, it runs in families, because some families, either anatomically or energetically, I don't know, share similarities. And so it's easier for them to tune in. And this electromagnetic connection, it's just about being able to focus and connect to the ether, which connects to everybody else. It's not, like he said, there is no supernatural. It's not mysterious. It's not creepy. It's not unique and weird. Everybody can do it. It's just that we have to work at it. And it's, it's hard work. So psychics have this, this electromagnetic field from within their central nervous system, and this, well, we all do, and this field rests above our skin. It surrounds us kind of like an electromagnetic bubble, and it's an organ, every bit as legitimate of an organ as the heart or the brain are, and it's centered in the third eye, in the pineal gland. And he said it's in quantum superposition. That's scary physics anyway. The electrons of it are essentially everywhere in the universe and nowhere specifically. We can access it any place, anytime, and that's what psychics do. They're just accessing this organ that we all have and that a lot of people just ignore. Psychics seem to have learned or have an inborn ability to balance the attention, to not focus on any one form, to learn to control this organ. The best way is to meditate and concentrate the mind on the physical sensations when you meditate. This relieves the pressure of incoming impressions from the physical world on this electromagnetic organ, and it enables it to expand. And it can expand all the way to God. And this is why people have these experiences. What is it called? Samadhi, ecstasy, is they're just really good at it. Anyone can become God even in life. Only human vision is imperfect. That's why we are where we are. You are perfect if you see your perfection. You know, it's there, we just have to recognize it. And he's not talking physical sight. It's in your inner vision. Your inner vision unfolds with spontaneity and it communicates with others. This is still the master speaking, by the way. Quantum physics gives us a partial view of the inner world, of the physical world, the inner workings of the physical world. This communication depends on the entanglement of particles. We today, we think it's about separating photons. And he says that this limits the faster than light communication by how apart we can place the entangled photons. He says there was once a time that all particles were in communication and all were entangled, but that's kind of different now. When physicists figure this out and work out how the photons are limited by us, and they figure out how to re-communicate all these entangled particles, we will be able to communicate globally across all worlds, and it will be instantaneous. In the quantum reality and in the perfecting of your being, your vision is everything. And it's, I guess, maybe perception. It's not your eyeballs, it's in here. Scientific progress, he said, is spiritual growth. And scientific progress can only progress as fast as our spirit evolves. I thought that was fascinating. The true human mind has 4 levels, and most of us are stuck at number 3. So our destiny is to enter the humanity of the universe, but we may not fulfill it because we seem to be stuck. So the question Strieber asks the questions most of the time. He says, are there such things as alien abductions? The answer is, as you grow in the 4th mind, you see more. And Strieber says, well, they seem brutal. And the answer is, the kitten fears the vet, and sometimes it requires violence to subdue its claws. The question is, are we fodder for higher world beings like steer in a slaughterhouse? And the answer is, don't be clever with me. So some of this is not satisfying, but we're going to continue as the book does. Strieber asks, what's your name? And the response was a question. He says, Michael? And Strieber says, what, an archangel in a turtleneck? And the master says, meaning his name, Legion. And Strieber says, I think you're human. And the guy says, there's no greater honor than to be called human. And this may seem a little disconnected because he's cherry-picked sections of the conversation. So we're jumping around a little bit. Not every single topic is completely related to every other topic, but it is. So Strieber says, back to quantum physics. And the answer is the layer of electrons outside the skin is an organ, a sensory organ. It acts naturally in psychics. It works better as your consciousness increases, and it's an organ of higher consciousness. You must be able to watch and not watch at the same time. And Strieber says that messages, impressions from this external organ come from, well, Strieber's told this, that messages will be delivered, the central nervous system will deliver impressions from this external organ to an area of the brain closest to the pineal gland. And that's the center of this organ, the third eye. A machine has been created that can communicate via entangled photons. So, now we're getting back to intelligent machinery. I have a hard time with this. And first, what will happen, that's going to happen when we've gotten our machines intelligent enough, they will be the first to detect voices from other worlds. And also, there are machines that can mimic the electromagnetic organ, the third eye. But they're going to have to be conscious to do that, and more about that later. So he says everything in life imprints on the soul. There are fragmentary souls that are sort of reined in by their radiant beings, like the bits and fragments, people who've had disjunctive experiences in lives. They're kind of all contained within the radiant being, the soul. And he said, God seeks true companions. Ecstasy is not ecstasy unless it's shared. Radiant beings can decide to be born into bodies or may be asked to as a life mission by the elemental, to go into the elemental world. This could be dangerous. They can fall from radiance, and I think that's kind of karma, right? We kind of know that. So a lot of this is happening now, especially with children. What he's saying is these kids are advanced souls, and they're entering the body of kids, to be of help, guidance, their mission. Some are so powerful they can create the image of bodies they once had. So they're not even in bodies, they're creating the image of bodies and walking around, and we don't notice the difference. I thought that was really interesting. Jesus said he was the Son of Man, and the Master says, take him at his word. Meaning, he was human, he wasn't God, but God was within him, and God is within us. A radiant body is full awareness and fully invested. Jesus entered his body consciously as a radiant body. He was also God, as are all of us God. The only difference is he was aware of it. The teachings of Buddha influenced Christianity. Buddha was a spiritual revolutionary. He brought a message of mercy and compassion to the dignity of man into a world of terror. At the time that he talked about these sorts of things was not a common frame of reference. Roman rule was blind and brutal and greedy, and ancient knowledge was murdered by the Roman ignorance and power. They destroyed the knowledge of how to consciously form a radiant body to end your needing to reincarnate and to make you free. Christ came to preserve this past knowledge and to pass it down, but the Roman political people took what Christ had been talking about after his death and transformed it into a religion after the fact. So we lost the understanding of reincarnation. They voted against not believing in it. We lost the understanding of that and the resurrection. He was seen walking around after his death, because he had that much control over his radiant being. We're talking higher vibration, an ascended master. All these terms, basically, we're talking the same thing. His radiant body was under his own conscious control to project an image of his physical body. The dead can meditate and concentrate too. I thought that was really interesting. He said it happens when the angels sing. They're engaging in one of the disciplines of ecstasy, is this group singing of the angels. Let's see here what I thought was important. By releasing thought in singing, they can themselves come into superposition where they are not in any one place. Okay, so superposition means you're everywhere. Their consciousness can ride the infinite. They can see all worlds then and participate in the ecstatic union that fills the universe. God will share all with all. And I can't help but wonder this much more physics-based, metaphysical idea of superposition of energy and sharing in ecstasy, singing of angels. Has that not been watered down into the notion of sitting on a cloud playing a harp when you die? I wonder. I just wonder. Where am I here? So Christ and Buddha have reappeared many times. The great error of our time, I would say one of the great errors of our time, is how religion externalizes Christ. It's always calling on Christ. Instead, we should call on our own heart, because that's where Christ is, that's where God is. The purpose of meditation is to organize the energetic body so it won't lose its integrity after death. And he repeats this in different ways throughout the book, but it's because it's important. It's important to know that we have the ability to do something about this for ourselves. The purpose of meditation is to fill the energetic body with objective sensation, consciousness. You are within life, but not entirely absorbed in life. Part of you observes yourself from a distance, and if you do not watch, you do not see. What you do not see won't impact any change in the spin of your electrons that make up the energetic body. The parts of your life that you don't see don't get carried on with you into your radiant body and ecstasy. The formation of your radiant body depends on this ecstasy. So I felt the need to editorialize here. I think I was trying to sort some of this out for myself. So I'm going to read this little tiny paragraph that I wrote called My Interpretation. Take it with a grain of salt. What I understand is up for debate. So I think what he's saying is that we're all vibrating energy. Each life is an opportunity to raise your consciousness of all that we are. If we don't see it all, we reincarnate until we do raise our awareness of what we are. And to rise above, out of a cycle of reincarnation, we need to raise the vibration of the electromagnetic field in our soul, the energetic body. To do this, we have to meditate to shut out external physical noise and focus on our internal life, the real us. Focus on objective sensation using the organ of the third eye, the electromagnetic field connected to the center in the brain. And all life is potentially ecstatic. Our elemental physical bodies are essential to the growth of our souls. Our aim should be to enter ecstasy. I think that's the end of my editorializing. I think that's what he's saying. Let me know if you disagree. We'll talk about it Sunday. So you must be fully realized to carry with you into death all of your harvest of experience. Don't be weighted with recrimination or regrets or guilt or fear. The trick is to learn to say, well, that was a lesson. I learned this. I didn't learn this. It would have been better to have made this choice and done this. I'll learn from it. I'll move on. God forgives our errors, but don't pray to an old man in the sky for forgiveness. It doesn't work like that. You have to look within yourself for the areas of darkness that carry these regrets. Reincarnate, we do reincarnate to row the boat of being toward ecstasy. Another way of saying to get it right. So we must live many times to build the radiant body, and to be born into the next world takes many lifetimes. It's just exhausting thinking about it, FYI, I don't know. So if you follow your real path within, you can do it more quickly. The real path within, is within, but the signposts are without. So what are those signposts? The things that happen in your life, your experiences, your love that you experience, the religion you're exposed to, all of it. Kind of like any journey, the path is marked by these. Now here's a really interesting concept that he talked about. I thought this was fascinating. I'd never thought about this at all. As you well know, I have sort of a prejudice against organized religion, and I tend to not focus very much on them anymore because I had them crammed down my throat. Well, he has a very interesting take on this. Buddha, Christ, and Muhammad are interlinked. They're all one system, not three. They are a triad. Triads come up a lot in philosophy, metaphysics. So Christianity, Islam, Buddhism are three parts of one whole. Christianity is the active part. Christianity teaches you to seek God within. Islam is the passive part. It teaches you to surrender to God. In other words, acceptance. And Buddhism is the reconciling part. It finds God. So you seek the kingdom as a Christian, you give yourself to God as a Muslim, and you find your new companion in the dynamic silence of Buddhism, meditation. It's really fascinating. There are three masters in one created system, and there are many other systems. So he's not saying you have to be attached to these three religions. He's just saying, as an example, this is how this functions. They're not so separate. And they weren't created. They grew from human experience. There are also many other systems, and for example, the gods of Hinduism are, and this is so interesting because this came up in our discussion the other day. I forget, was it the context of it was in the context of talking about Oppenheimer, the Bhagavad Gita, which is part of the greater Mahabharata, and the fact that the Hindu structure of gods is actually the progression of the human psyche as it matures. I just, whoa. So the gods of Hinduism are structures of the personality in pure meaning. And Hinduism is the path of soul knowledge. The knowledge of the gods is the knowledge of the soul. Great systems of self-knowledge happen in Egypt also, and Hinduism. A true relationship with the Hindu gods provides most of the food for the energetic body. So we're going to have to look into this. So our entire pantheon of deities is us. God is us. Gods, angels, demons, us. Mankind spoke to Muhammad in a cave. Mankind spoke as Buddha under the Bodhi tree. And mankind spoke to Christ in the desert. Mankind being God. Satan and God are man. Satan seeks, God waits. I love that. That's just freaky, personally. So, we do not surrender to God yet Even Muslims, devout Muslims, because that's their central function, is to surrender to God. And I don't really fully understand what that truly means. We're going to talk to Denise about that. She's my OED of metaphysics, Oxford English Dictionary. Okay, so we don't surrender to God yet, not even if you're a really devout practicing Muslim. The master told Strieber that only the great Sufis have somewhat learned to surrender to God. And as long as you defy God by self-will, Satan finds and captures you. And I think it just means opposition to the good. That's all I can come out of it. Self-will is the illusion that we can and must act on our own behalf. And it prevents us from entering the will of God, which is inside you. God is not the self. That is a Western concept, a Western cultural idea. God is all being. To surrender, okay, here's a definition. I obviously don't fully understand this, but to surrender to God is to make your energetic body transparent so the light of God shines through you. Self is what your brain thinks is you, as you are in this life, and it's a very small fraction of what you really are. It doesn't include your past life experiences because most people don't even remember them. Many humans today have experienced many lives, immeasurable lives. God within you is immeasurably vast. You can become perfect. Buddha, Christ, and Mohammed did. Many unknowns have also possibly people that we'll never know. We can't name them. He said the ascended beings could be sleeping on a park bench or pumping gas. You know, you can't judge by looking at people's appearance. He said Christ is starving in the back street. Christ was not perfect. Oh good, let's look at that. So, he said, if Christ was God and God is perfect, this is the question. If Christ is God and God is perfect, why would he need to become perfect? Christ was not perfect, or he would not have been human. His humanity asked that the cup be taken from him. His divinity died a conscious death. But you must understand that his imperfect humanity and his perfect divinity were the same thing. That seems irreconcilable, but it isn't, because even when Christ suffered, interesting, my slip. Even when Christ suffered, he was in ecstasy. I am here to get you to recognize yourself as divine. That is to say, as a participant in ecstasy, even during elemental life. The new man will live in ecstasy, even though he lives in chains. So then Strieber asks him to define all this. Hang on a second, let me see. The spin or vibration of the energetic body can go infinitely fast, and it exists beyond time, and then the body will radiate of its own accord, and it becomes God and co-creative companion of God. Even a simple bit of God, like you're like the crumb of a cake. It can raise the vibrations to attain ecstasy, even a little bit of you. And as it raises the vibration to attain ecstasy, it becomes whole. So our destiny is to become all of God, to join with the source. That was my question. Is that what he's saying? To join with the source. See, he says this is slowed by points of attachment, about our attachment to the 3D world between the energetic soul and the elemental physical body. Buddha taught detachment is essential to ecstasy. So that's interesting. Meditation teaches you to see life as an outsider and a participant. The outsider notices the sensations of a meal and uses life to gain the impressions. The participant only eats. And then he says, so consider the outsider. It sees the packed bodies around him. He smells the sweat and the urine. He hears the soft clatter of the crystals with absolute objective calm, and inhales the searing torment of the gas without being in any way identified with the injustice or the cruelty or the terror around him. But the participant screams, it suffers the agony of the elemental body and knows the greatest terror man has ever known, which was experienced in the dark gas chambers of the Holocaust. And then, so interesting, Strieber asks him, "Are you dead?" And the guy says, "Yes. When you kill one being, you kill all." He says, "I die 1,000,000 times a day, but I am also being born, awakening, and enjoying." Ascension is not flying into the sky. Ascension is expanding your being to the full universe. You can expand beyond time, beyond infinity, and still be here. Here is everywhere. I believe this is once again talking about that physics concept of superposition. All are all and part of all. We are the consciousness of the planet. We are the awakening earth. The destiny of man and the destiny of the earth are one. Kill the earth and we kill ourselves. Now this is getting into the part that I think, if I remember correctly, that freaked me out. If we kill the earth before we are evolved spiritually, we must wait for the chance to fit into another body on some other planet that matches our attention, our vibratory level. If none does, we may wait forever. We remain incomplete. We hunger to be radiant. We will exist in a state of regret and pain because we will see but not enter the joy. And that sounds like the description of purgatory. That you linger in a place where you know you're not in the existence of God, the presence of God. That's the definition of purgatory. If the proper spin is not achieved by Earth or re-achieved by Earth eventually, so the Earth will, or another Earth will evolve while we wait and achieve the right spin. And if it doesn't, we will exist in this state of knowing that we missed our ecstasy. Humans' eternal joy depends on the healing of the earth, the health of the earth. This was probably the hardest thing in the book for me to hear. Every joy, sorrow, good, and evil belongs to us all. All are responsible for all. Humanity is one. All creation is one. If one person suffers, we all suffer. That's why we're supposed to care about the poor and the sick and the homeless and the prisoner. That's why it matters. That's why there's such evil in hoarding wealth and turning your head away from those who suffer, because we're all suffering. The universe is expanding and contracting and has happened many times. It contracts and explodes and is reborn, and when it does this, every time it increases its intensity. Eventually, it will exceed the speed of light and fulfill I am beyond time. We are not part of God, we are God. All are God. God is like a hologram. This was interesting. God is like a hologram. The whole is in every fragment. Infinite consciousness is in everything. All knowledge is in every cell. Our imperfection is that we can't see ourselves as we are. Each human must become transparent to the light of God before we as a species can journey on. We're held back by our own inadequacies and the inadequacies of everybody else. We need to offer a hand up to those who are struggling. And I mean spiritually. About half of the humans have become radiant beings. There are only as many in bodies at a time as are essential for the welfare of others, so they come to help. The meek shall inherit the earth and find the ascended by what's in their hearts, he says. Can't read my handwriting. The elevated must be humble enough to surrender to a higher will. To be elevated, you have to be humble. The children will tell you with their eyes what you are. Now, that was a little creepy. He says, Strieber asks, could we ever be rescued if we destroy the earth before we were finished perfecting ourselves? He says, nobody can change except inside the stream of time. Outside of it, nothing changes, nothing can. We enter the time stream by inserting our energetic bodies into elemental bodies on this planet of which we were born. Strieber says, well, what about going to another planet? And the answer is, the leaf cannot grow on another tree. It can be grafted, Strieber says, and the answer is if you were given leave to enter the interstellar world in the elemental body, you will go as the others do from a firm foundation of radiant being. But if you destroy your world, you die here. Yikes. He says there is another world waiting for us to help it, just as we are helped now by others. In other words, we have a job to do and we're shirking our responsibility. The other world is waiting for our help. It's all part of the plan of your evolution. Okay, he says, Strieber says, I've written about evolutionary pressure. It explains what's being done to us, the theatrical appearance of UFOs in the sky, the assaults on us by night, the ferocious official secrecy, the collapse of the environment, all of it. It's evolutionary pressure. And the master says, it's all part of the plan of your evolution. Pisces, the little fish, will be poured out onto dry land by the stream of Aquarius. Then how will you live? How will you breathe? You will make a leap of evolution. You will square the circle or die. You will be the aliens one day. In other words, for somebody else. If you do not survive, those waiting for your help will not receive it. You depend on others and other depends on you. Other worlds exist on many levels with many different beings, but the basic laws of reality stay the same. So he hints that the pure Masonic craft in its impeccable form, like as it was originally intended, is God's plan for freedom. And when it was kept secret, it entered into the danger of corruption. There was a government of the world in earlier times that existed. And after humanity ceased to surrender to the law of God, this Masonic craft had to become secret to stay alive because of this government. He travels to other planets by, new topic. He travels to other planets by manipulating mass. He says we humans will learn it in time. We choose when. We are governed from the radiant level, but man is a child. Children govern with the wisdom of children. Oh, snap. There are aliens here using and guiding us. So, two kinds. Being exploited and we're being helped. There aren't many planets that can sustain complex elemental bodies like ours, and they vary. They depend on your chemical makeup. Some are like us, and some are very different than we. Aliens can be invisible to us by bending light, which explains a lot, or they can influence our minds to not see them. That's even scarier. Some look just like us, and they are among us, and we don't know it. Don't you wish you could know, like, who do you know that's an alien? I have a couple of candidates in my life. So, some look just like us, they're among us, they're part of the government, and they use it as a source of power. Well, I could name names. The secrecy is controlled by a higher level than human institutions. God. Man has two sides. To see the light, you must bear the darkness. And this is what I thought was so interesting. We've touched on this a little bit in the past, that I hesitate to talk about this because it sounds like moral relativism, which is sort of a satanic belief that, whatever, do whatever, it's all, what's right for you is wrong for other people. And in a sense, this is kind of what he's saying is, it's the contrast that we learn from, and bad things may appear to be being done, but there's a contrast that's being presented, which is a good thing. I mean, it's complicated. I'm going to add that to my extensive list of things I don't understand. So, man has two sides. To see the light, you have to bear the darkness. And these aliens, they control us through planning and mind control, the secret people in charge. Strieber is told that he has been technologically intervened with to ensure that fields of control do not affect him. So he's immune to this external control the rest of us are being controlled by. I wonder if that's what's causing the insanity politically that's going on. That's really interesting. Let me put a question mark down here. You can tell by writing that that's not a question mark because I wrote MAGA question mark. So there is a directional suggestion applied to the electrical fields that control people. For example, the military and the government are controlled this way. That's scary. It's done with radio frequencies. Microwaves can project through thought into the brain, which is really disturbing because a common complaint of some people who have delusions is that their brains are being controlled by microwaves. So, oh God. So the general fields create and control tendencies, and they try to preserve the maximum amount of freedom, these control agents, for the maximum number of people. They're trying to control and at the same time allow freedom for the most numbers of people. That's difficult to understand. There's a world of humans that evolved artificially off planet, and they can come and go freely. Now that's yet another thing that's kind of hard to understand. He's saying that humans have been raised off the earth in this solar system and that there are thousands of them. That's bizarre too. And they come here and Strieber asks, what do they do here? They enforce mankind's blindness by preventing science from exploring the key mysteries of the past and discovering a practical means of expanding into the universe. And they maintain the official secrecy that keeps the question of whether or not aliens are here from being answered. And he's asked, why do they harm us? And it's the objective of resistance is to make you strong. The weightlifter puts more and more weight to himself so that he will be able to lift more and more. So mankind can be challenged because we are meant to ascend. So they are pushing us into ascension. And then I've already written a question mark here. Surrender to God and your enemies will become your friends. Humans are being altered to remove barriers to telepathy. And there is a lot of talk about genetic manipulation going on. Pressure is now existing to evolve faster to induce an evolutionary leap. Time is coming that the planet is dying and you will see aliens around you. This was 98. Uh-oh. But they won't help, even if we beg. Free will, right? This is our lesson. Their inaction is help because we need to suffer and struggle to grow, to open our elemental body to ecstasy. Man is destined in the next 2,000 years to ascend or to go extinct. When you say God, this master says, you think of somebody outside of yourself. You think as the age of worship thinks. Over the last age, the age of Pisces, the elemental body was changed by this process of worship. It's not the same as it was 2,000 years ago. So our bodies are different. Like if you got somebody from 2,000 years ago and compared them to us now, there are these subtle differences. Now the receptacle is larger. Now each of you can contain all the universe. That was not true then. Now this is a species of sacred beings, but you are babies, and so still ignorant of your powers. The last age was the age of the external God. This is the age of God within. And Strieber says, what about religion? Do they offer us a path back to God? You have no religion. Religions don't have victims. There is a new path. Drop my pen here. Sorry about that. Where was I? My goodness. So religion must be brought back inside of us. He said, look to God within you. You must bring the kingdom within, or there will be long ages of darkness and suffering. At the end of it, the age of suffering, man will once again only be intelligent animals. We will lose everything, all memory of history, science, etc. Human consciousness will die. So what he's saying is, as the planet dies, there's going to be a mass extinction, and whoever's left is going to be back to a primal state of ignorance. Oh, here we go. You will revert to your animal nature. It's already happening around us, and I think we're seeing that. And people who are debased have lost their humanity. They are brilliant animals, and some of them are not so brilliant. Religions demand belief. Belief is always a lie. Let me repeat that. Religions demand belief. Belief is always a lie. Now, don't be confused, because we talked about the similarities between Christianity and Islam and Buddhism, the connection, the triad. He's talking about institutionalized religions. Those are philosophies of understanding. He's talking about all the rules and regulations and such. They're not of facts, they're only of truths. The essence of reality is questions. And therefore, the closest thing that we can relate to was the attitude in the 60s, question everything, question authority. Belief rejects God. Communion with God is the science of self-discovery and self-knowledge. And this is a lost science. It was intentionally taken from us. The Eucharist recalls the past, when we lived in the forests and ate the dead to gain their strength. And he says it's painful to even think about this reenactment of communion with the blood and body of Christ. He said this is a primitive remembrance of when we were living in caves, and it's painful. Painful to think that that's where we are. So Strieber asks him, well, is there some sort of equivalent of the Eucharist before Christ? And he says, he doesn't want to answer this. You will find the science of ascension in the dancing of the Sufis, the meditations of the yogi, the prayer of the Christian monastics. This science is lost as a science, but it can be regained. He's asked, was Christ God? The promise of resurrection is the essential promise of being. Rebirth is not a literal reconstitution of the elemental body. It is rather awakening from the sleep of being. Resurrection can take place in you right now. You are Lazarus in the tomb, all of you. And Christ is always knocking upon the door, calling you to come out. Soon the tomb will be torn down around you, and you must come out. Asked, did Christ rise? He said, well, most die by nature, but Christ died by intention. What's the process of resurrection? The energetic body detaches from the elemental body, which it can no longer sustain the attachments. Christ's energetic body was radiant, but it left its elemental body just like yours will, and everybody's does. The work of the demon among you is to deceive you into believing that Christ was better than you. Christ said it, I am the Son of Man. Christ is all are Christ. He was simply an ascended master, somebody who had a better grip on the spiritual, not anything other than that. He said modern Wicca, he asked him about Wicca, and he said modern Wicca is a new faith that recognizes ancient practices. He said hidden in the ruins of ancient religions are some diamonds. You know, you can't dismiss everything, which I tend to do. You can't dismiss everything because there are some vital facts, truths. The science of the soul is just another science. There is no supernatural, only physics. But the physics and electronics involved in communicating with intelligent energy is very subtle. Nothing, however, that you're not capable of right now. The devices needed to make your beginning are already sold in stores. I have a feeling they're not iPhones. What devices do you refer to? Strieber asks. Devices that detect magnetic fields and electromagnetic plasmas. You will find living energetic beings in this way. They will not be very richly alive, but they will be there. You may also detect simple energetic beings that have little intelligence. They are all around you. You'll be able to communicate, and many don't have this wisdom, but some people do. And you can tell of the true past and the true future if you work on it. And he asks, what about physical communication? And the answer is, and I love this, crop circles. Some of them are two-dimensional portraits of these beings trying to communicate about themselves to us. So people cling to the idea that they're hoaxes because to face the return of the dead is to face the change of the age. And it's terrifying to incomplete souls because one, they fear their time to grow is running out, and it's true. And two, they fear that they'll become unable to change. Resurrected man is a consistent theme, and so throughout the history of humankind, sometimes I write these notes so abbreviated that I totally cannot remember what it was that I was trying to say, but I do remember this, that there's a long history of this recurring theme of man resurrected from Osiris to Christ. And they were fully conscious, and they could make their radiant bodies be seen and were recognized as unique. The radiant body is the part of you that is conscious in the energetic world. It is in every cell of elemental life. It is not mysterious. There's nothing mysterious about eternal life of the soul. It is energy. And every cell carries the memory of your life and lives. And when you're dead, all the dead see all. There's no privacy in the afterlife, the other life, from one another and from the living. You can't hide nothing from the dead, and they can hide nothing from each other. There's no need to hide anything. He talks about the evolution of religion. He said, first there was the age of sacrifice. So you see that in the Old Testament. Then there was the age of worship, which is what we're emerging from now. And now we're entering the age when man and God become one. The body has evolved to have the potential for that. And it's happening in children. I keep saying it's really remarkable when you see these kids, how astute they really are. They are wise. Okay. I am here to bring you a promise from on high. If you surrender yourselves to God, you and the earth will be saved. Otherwise, you will be extinct before the end of the age, which is happening now. The age of Aquarius is what we're in. Okay. So we're all weaving a tapestry of living memories so they be not forgotten, which is kind of what Dolores Cannon talked about. Those with a higher vibration started with a darker foundation. Even in gas chambers, extraordinary instances of resurrection occurred. Life lived at its transformational intensity in that moment. The struggle and the suffering are what bring the elevation, is what he's saying. The evil of death transformed into the glory of God. Some made suffering a process of courage, and it progressed to ecstasy, which is why Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is possibly my favorite book, and I talk about it, I think, all the time. And I did synopsize it if you want to go back and look. Maybe I'll put it under playlists, if I remember. Remind me. It is a remarkable book because it was a wise soul's struggle to retain his divinity in the worst of all possible environments. At death, you see the scope of your life and you really live the pleasures, but you also re-experience your evil acts and you shrink from them and you can't escape them. All these things are parts of nature. The real sin, there are little sins in nature, and the real sin is the willful indulgence of imperfection. To die takes courage because most of us are blind to higher worlds. People are scared. That's why we did those books just recently about the process of dying. I'll say this, it's easy to say. It's harder to actually live, but there's nothing to be afraid about it. But it's the unknown, and even when you know, it's still not experienced in our memory, and that makes it hard. Real religion and real science are the same thing. To live means to notice and to take responsibility. Many thousands of worlds exist like ours in varying states of development, and some worlds are worse and some worlds are better than our world here on Earth. Some have achieved the ability to go across time and space because their elemental body eventually becomes radiant. So let's stop here because this is a good place to stop, and we'll move on to video number 3. Hope I'm not throwing too much at everybody all at one time, but I am eager to cover this today so that tomorrow we can have this in-depth conversation and try to figure out what this is all about. So I'll be back. Slán go fóill.